Rewind the dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. It's John Pollock here, along with Wai Ting. Hello, Wai.
What's up, John?
Not a whole lot. Not too much is going on. A nice day.
Sure. It is, yeah. Yeah, I have to warn everybody. I'm going through some internet issues presently, so if there are any awkward pauses between me and John throughout this show, it's because I'm probably on a bit of a delay. It's not because we're taking time to think or anything like that. Although we do like to think before we speak. I think that's always good to practice.
Well, good to know. Maybe, what if I do give you something very philosophical to think about? You better be very quick to respond then to make sure it's not your connection.
You know, I really do think we should learn to be more comfortable with the silence between our conversations. You know, so much in broadcasting is just like trying to fill the silence. But come on, you can say a whole lot with silence. So let's practice.
I broke.
All right.
You're much better at it than me.
See, like I learned so much, John, in those 15 seconds.
Yeah, you really gave some thought. Do you know where you and I were 15 years ago, right now, at this hour?
15 years ago. So that would have been 2006. March 31st, 2006.
Yep.
Shit. Whoa. Would have been Chicago. Right?
Blood Generation and Do Fixer.
Oh, that was today. Yes, we were there. That is right. Yes, one of the greatest matches of all time.
That was our 12-hour day at the Frontier Fieldhouse.
Yeah. Yeah, the first day.
Long day.
You know, it was our first work trip together, me and you, along with your friend Brad.
Brad came along, yeah. We went for work, and he wanted to come along for WrestleMania. That's right.
Yes.
That's the first time we went on a work trip. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I had barely begun at the Fight Network by that point, but and the Law. But right. It was WrestleMania season. I guess, you know, we had planned on doing a series of shorts through Ring of Honor. And that day we met a lot of people. First time we spoke to Samoa Joe, spoke to Chris Daniels, and even spoke to Gabe Sapolsky.
We'd been around some of them at the famous Fight Network party.
The launch party, right.
The launch party, yes, where they hired TNA to do a show. Yeah, that was an extremely long day. And by the end of it, I remember thinking after 11 hours in that building, I told Wai, you know what I could go for right now? A 56-minute main event. And they delivered.
What was it? Danielson
and Roddy.
Or was it Homicide and Colt Cabana that night?
That was the next night. That was the next night when we went, and it was the goddamn chairs being thrown, and still, I've told this story many times, it just scarred me because people were throwing chairs from the crowd, and one dude got nailed in the back of the head with one of these chairs. I'm like, this is the dumbest idea, these throwing of chairs. And that was the show we got, because we went to the Hall of Fame, and we looked at our watch after, and it was like, we can make the end of this show. And we got there literally for, like, I want to say we got there for the tail end of Danielson and Lance. And I guess we saw, I guess we got there, obviously, and then Cabana and Homicide ended the show. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so much of that day, I think, was a bit of a fog. But to know that we were there for a number of great matches like that is pretty cool. Wow, 15 years ago.
a long time ago. Well, tonight we have Dynamite to discuss. We have some news to go through, and we'll mention it one more time about Saturday. We've got post-podcast day. So for all of you that are listening, if you're a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe, or you're not, well, it's a brand new month on Thursday. So the absolute best time to join the cafe. It will give you access to all of our bonus shows, and it's going to be a very busy couple of weeks leading into WrestleMania and coming out of it, but also gaining you access to post-podcast day this Saturday at noon Eastern for all cafe members.
That is correct. And in addition to that, of course, you have Rewind to SmackDown access every single Friday, live or archived. You have access to our Falcon and Winter Soldier reviews on MCU later with me and WH Park. Our Creed 2 review is set to take place sometime in the next month, as well as Rewind Away, talking about some New Japan. So all that and more for your pledge to the Post Wrestling Cafe, postwrestlingcafe.com.
And all of the information for Post Podcast Day can be found up on the website, postwrestling.com/podcast day. We'll have a Q&A with Ariel Helwani. The Nubian Wrestling Advocates will assemble. We've got worst WrestleMania matches ever with Braden and Davey. A live Ask Away with the two of us. And of course, Gary Michael Capetta joining Martin and Benno.
Yeah, I'm very excited for all of those. And let's not forget Turned Out a Punk with Damian Abraham and Tim from Tribe Called Red. And I believe they might be attempting some form of watch-along for an episode of The Wrestlers that Tim appeared on. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Well, there you go. 6 hours of post-wrestling, and should be a lot of fun on Saturday. So we hope many of you will be joining us coming up. And we'll also note we'll be live Friday with Rewind to SmackDown as usual. And Thursday, we will have an interview with Dr. Alex Patel up on the site. It's been a couple of months since we have checked in with him. And guess what? This virus isn't going away. So Dr. Alex Patel is going to come and answer all of our new questions that we have formed over the last 3 months.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I was hoping our next conversation with Alex was going to be very different, but certainly in Ontario, we are in the midst of, I think, a period where we're looking for more answers now than ever. So Alex, I think, is a very welcome conversation I'm looking forward to having. If you're a patron, we have a feedback thread up on the forum for you to leave questions to, or if you just want to leave, your questions under this, wherever you want to reach us, I'll try to work all that stuff in as well.
So we'll go on over to some news items, just a few things to get through before the Dynamite review. Not anything revelatory, but nonetheless, USA Network and WWE making it official that NXT will be moving to Tuesdays beginning April 13th, so the Tuesday after WrestleMania, and it is now official. We will have pro wrestling on national television every night of the week, and you compound that with Ring of Honor in syndication and all the other streaming shows that are out there as well. It is 5 nights a week minimum of pro wrestling, and NXT moving to Tuesdays. I wrote about this today in the update that, if we're going by the mini, and it was a very small sample of the experiment last summer when NXT went to Tuesdays and AEW went unopposed those 2 weeks on Wednesdays, kind of what we can be looking for in terms of audience gain. I think certainly this is going to benefit NXT, I think, greatly moving to Tuesdays. And, the NHL, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that there was no way USA could be picking up these games and you leave NXT on Wednesdays. It was going to cause either multiple preemptions all over the place, or you move it. So I think this is the wise move to be making. And the next question will be, what does this mean for AEW on Wednesday nights without having a direct wrestling competitor?
I think it's a great question. We've seen unopposed nights for AEW and, one-offs due to whatever reason, but I don't think they've resulted in such significant, changes in viewership but we haven't really seen sort of a sustained unopposed evening for AEW. So how is that going to change them? How is it going to affect NXT? Will they grow considerably? Either way, I think it's a huge benefit, not just for the promotions, but for the fans. This whole Wednesday Night Wars thing, it was fun. It was probably fun for about 6 months. And then after that, it's just like, I've had enough of like the constant back and forth every Thursday, whenever these numbers come out. It's just like, it's too much, you know? Everybody just like enjoy it all. We all have a chance now. Tuesday, you can watch NXT. You could be an NXT fan again. You could be an AEW fan on Wednesday. It makes it much more easy for people like us to watch it, certainly. And, you know, we can give equal time now to all these shows, which is, I think, ultimately a very good thing for the fans.
I'm going to miss my Thursday 4 o'clock p.m. hour of comedy as people got upset at math. I'm going to miss that part because it was astounding to me. There was never a week it wasn't. Going back, looking back at those 2 weeks that NXT went to Tuesday nights, not to say this is going to be the case as they move to Tuesdays that they can expect these increases, but those 2 weeks, the increases they saw over the previous 4 head-to-head shows was 25% in viewers, 33% in their demo. So maybe that's, expecting too much of what they're going to retain every Tuesday night. But I think what it does show is the idea of going to a new night, that we've got to establish the new night and we got to educate people that it's on Tuesdays. I don't think that's going to be as big a problem as some think it's going to be. When they tried this out, and AEW got to see this on Thursdays, and they got to see it on a Saturday as well, these are viewers on both shows that will follow. And I don't think it's going to be this big migration process. I think people are going to be aware it's on Tuesday, and I think the effects will be immediate.
I think so too. I think, at this point you're dealing with some pretty hardcore fans that are watching both NXT and AEW, and I think you're dealing with a very kind of internet savvy audience as well that'll be very much aware through kind of, social media and things like this. So I agree. And like, it's not like they're moving to a Saturday. It's not like they're moving to Friday at midnight or anything like that. Like, it's a pretty much like similar type of viewing pattern for most people, I would say, shifting from Wednesday at 8 p.m. to Tuesday at 8 p.m. So I don't think it's much of a change. In fact, I do wonder if you'll see more kind of a lead-in through Monday Night Raw. I mean, I guess
I'm not expecting it because I thought that would be the case of Monday to Wednesday, and we see so little of that. I'm expecting it's going to stay the exact same. Even though it makes sense, from one night to the next, that you would get that push from Raw, but it just seems like NXT is on an island, and they do not figure into Raw or SmackDown storylines in any way.
Do you expect WWE to put any sort of counter-programming through the network? Not that it would, have any bearing, I would say, on an AEW number or anything like that, but do you see them putting anything on Peacock at the same time?
In time, I could see that. Because again, I think this is a move because of the NHL. This is not a case of them, deciding that we don't want to be against AEW. So I could see in time that they put something up there, but I don't know what you are going to, a streaming option to me on Peacock. Is that going to eat away at AEW's audience? I don't think so. So I don't see that happening in the short term, but that was, I remember when the story first broke, that was Cody Rhodes' reaction, was that they expect probably something else will end up on Wednesdays. But at least on linear television, that I don't see happening because it can't, given the current options, unless it's a different broadcaster they're with.
Do we also know what time NXT will go up on the network?
24 hours later. It'll be on Peacock 24 hours later, and I assume that will be the same for those international. Okay,
great. So, for some people, if they don't choose to watch Tuesdays, you can watch Dynamite and go right to the network and watch NXT.
That's right. Yeah. You, in theory, I believe that. I know that's the case for Peacock. So we will see if international follows. And I did speak to someone at Rogers who echoed the fact they'll be moving it to Tuesdays in Canada as well. So it's not going to be on a 1-day delay in Canada. So everyone will be in sync with it in this country. And we can move on to Raw's number from Monday night. This was interesting. They did 1,701,000 viewers. So it was their lowest viewership of the year. Every week I've been talking about, their viewership is in this pattern. They are 1.8 million every week, give or take several thousand. And this week they fell to their lowest of the year. Their demo, though, was 0.57. They were number one for the night, and they were up this week. And many of their demographics were up this week, with the exception of women 18 to 49, which was only down 5%, but their 50 plus audience, which is their largest demographic, was down 13.5%. So that demo, is the weighted portion of this audience that sunk it to its lowest amount this year. So as we look at it, the pattern throughout the show was actually a very healthy one. It's the one we've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, where the first to third hour growth was very good in pretty much all the demos, except for adults over 50, who not only were they down this week, 13.5%, but those that did tune in tuned out at a rate of 13% throughout the show. So you have a case of what is typically your audience that is your foundation of this show, that to me, that's more reflective of the quality of the show, and that what is working for others is not working for your oldest demo that seem to be tuning out of the current product. And it hurts your overall viewership, but it's not affecting Raw's placement. And overall, I would still say, you're finishing first on cable. Your demo was up this week. Those are some positives, even if your viewership was the lowest of the year. And that is, that's notable too.
What would entice somebody to stick around for that show? I have no idea.
Well, wait, there was their 18 to 34 audience was up 40% this week, which means SmackDown and Raw, back-to-back shows, did very good 18 to 34 numbers, and that demo grew over 22% throughout the show. And you look at this, and this is a show that this was very, very healthy growth patterns for most of their demos, that were not turning people off throughout this show. And, we are also seeing I don't know what you pin it on, because I'm with you. It's a little perplexing, but there's obviously things that are connecting with a large amount of I won't say a large amount of their audience, because their largest audience is turning this off as the show goes on, but they're on their own. The rest are not.
Listen, the young people love their charades. I guess they love their Bad Bunny impressions, and they love man, what the fuck? What was in the main event here? I don't even remember. What was the main event?
They closed the show with
Drew and it was Lashley and Drew.
Yeah.
So
with the matches with Ali and Ricochet, and then ending with that whole angle with King Corbin.
So you know what? I take everything back I said on Monday. This works, everybody. This was a great show. It was a very, very strong success. Very strong.
Well, maybe you can try and figure out that number. Here's one that is more stunning. So last week, Impact did their lowest number of the year. They did 116,000 viewers, 0.04 demo number. Now this week, they were going against NCAA basketball, which has definitely hurt wrestling throughout this March Madness. This week, I thought this was an error, but it appears to be the legitimate figure that Impact did. 116,000 last week, their lowest of the year. This week, 38,000 viewers, 0.01 demo figure. That's I don't care what your sports competition is, to fall to that level is shocking to me. Shocking.
What's the explanation? I mean, is it just basketball?
I can't just pin that all on basketball, especially for Impact. That is, they saw, when they fell to 116 last week, it was that was an aberration for the Impact audience. That's usually, it's pretty close. It might be up a little, down a little, but you're not seeing giant swings. So to fall that much this week, again, I thought maybe there's some kind of error here, but that appears to be the number.
Interesting.
I guess maybe wrestling fans don't want to see someone celebrate his 1,000th match with a promotion.
Or maybe they just thought, oh, it's on Thursdays now. I don't have to tune in today. Maybe they thought too early. They thought that the move, they're going to tune in tomorrow and be like.
Then I'll tell you what, NXT's in for a rude awakening tomorrow, aren't they? I thought it was on Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have no clue. I mean, whenever something is this drastic, I think we wait to see if it's a trend or just a bit of an anomaly.
That's it. I mean, I'd be very shocked if this is any kind of trend. And next week we're back to the exact. Well, next week's the Thursday debut, which is actually a show that I think they have a very big main event with Kenny Omega wrestling, but they are going against Takeover. So, this was their
easy. It's going to be tough.
So there you go. Mike Johnson at PW Insider reporting that Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax will defend their women's tag titles on night 2 of WrestleMania. And on this coming Monday's Raw, they will set up a multi-team match. We're not sure of the teams yet, but they will have a match on night 1 with the winners advancing to night 2. So there you go, Wai. Figuring out the puzzle that is the women's tag team title picture for WrestleMania. It seems like it's all peaking after all these months of buildup.
Well, I hope they have a great match, because I think we saw today, you can overcome a bad story by having a great performance when it's time to actually have the match. So I hope that's the case for the women.
We noted it on Monday. Road Dogg Brian James is now out of the hospital, so that is obviously good news, as he will be, I guess, on the road to recovery. He put a statement out that he's got his work ahead of him, but that's good news to know that he is out of the hospital after that issue. And Nate Diaz is coming back May 15th. He's going to be fighting Leon Edwards at UFC 262 in Houston, Texas. This was huge news on Tuesday night.
Wow. Awesome. Great. He's a big name.
He is. He is a very big name. Have you followed any of the Jon Jones drama with the UFC? Has that penetrated your world?
I mean, really just through you. I know they're basically bargaining on social media.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Jones came out today and he threw the exact figures out. He said he had a discussion with Hunter Campbell, who is the one of the key people at the UFC, and Jones made it clear that $8 to $10 million for this fight is too low. Do not even come to me with those figures, which is going to put you into a position where 99% of fighters out there are going to look at that and say, dude, I'll fight for a fraction of that. And Derek Lewis basically said that exact same thing, that he would be more than willing to fight for anything approximating that figure. But in the grand scheme of things, like, Jon Jones is someone that when you look at what this fight can do, he has every right to command, like, this is an enormous fight, and he is trying to, make sure he gets paid what he can. But it's at a time when fighters have never had less leverage with this ESPN deal. And the UFC, it's like they are not servants any longer to pay-per-view, where they're taking in so much of their revenue based on how a pay-per-view performs. Like they have a set guarantee that they get for every pay-per-view. It's ESPN that would be the ones wanting such a big fight. They're going to prosper in that kind of scenario. And for a Jon Jones, like, this will be an interesting game, because what the UFC is going to do is that they have a backup plan in Derek Lewis, who will happily take that fight. And it's the age-old debate of fighters perceiving that they're underpaid, and when they try and use leverage, it's not a united front. Like, you are always going to have fighters that are willing to fight for less. And for a Jon Jones, like, he very well may be entitled to an enormous amount for this fight with Francis Ngannou, which could be gigantic. But it will be very interesting. It's a fight that has a big public demand. I would say that fight will be an enormous one if they can make it, but it could also upset the salary structure. So I think it's a very intriguing story to follow in MMA. So let's move on now to Dynamite. All your news can be found at postwrestling.com, and look out for our interview, as we mentioned, with Dr. Alex Patel on Thursday. We also have a really great show on Brian Pillman, the Loose Cannon DVD that we just did for Rewind-A-Way. I really like that show a lot, Wai. I
did too. I really enjoyed the chat. I thought you provided a lot of great extra information that wasn't necessarily in the documentary, and we'll talk about, like, WWE's presentation of this man's very interesting story. And this all, of course, comes ahead of the Dark Side of the Ring premiere, which will focus specifically on Brian Pillman. So I think it's a great primer to set you up for that. And I enjoyed the conversation we had.
Yeah, I think it's a great to get you kind of up to speed on a lot of the story, because I think that Dark Side episode will be pretty fantastic with the research that I imagine went into that. And that's going to be a 2-hour premiere that they do. So it's going to be a pretty in-depth look. And I think that I thought you and I got into a lot of interesting discussion about Brian Pillman and how you assess a figure like that, and what that it's so much of a figure that we have looked at the physical toll he took, and I don't think enough on the emotional pain that he probably went through throughout a lifetime of pain and suffering and loss, and just an enormous amount. It's a very complex story with Brian Pillman. So if you want to check that out, that is the latest edition of Rewind-A-Way. But we move on to Dynamite, and the show began with the first singles match for one Christian Cage since 2014, making his AEW debut against Frankie Kazarian, who is 11-0 this year, they noted. And Excalibur even brought up their ladder match from 13 years ago without mentioning Impact Wrestling, who we are lending our AEW champion to in their biggest pay-per-view ever in a couple of weeks' time. But couldn't work in a mention of who Impact are.
I mean, I wasn't sure why. You have, one of the heads doing an ankle for you right now. So not that this really needed it, like if you really wanted to go all the way, you could have actually shown the footage. But, something tells me that this was just a bit of an extra add-in from Excalibur here. Maybe he didn't want to, step on any weird toes.
That match that they had, that ladder match, I'm pretty sure it was either me or Mauro Ranallo. One of us did the interview, but it was like days before that, speaking to Frankie Kazarian. And dude, that guy was so excited for that match to be wrestling Christian Cage. Like, he was viewing it like, this is a huge break in my career to be working with Christian Cage on a pay-per-view. In a ladder match, too. Like, this was not going to be some throwaway match. So it was a big deal to him at the time. So the crowd is chanting, "You still got it." This being the crowd consisting of like the talent as well, which I've always thought like wrestlers hate this chant. They do not want to hear "You still got it."
I mean, would it be better if they didn't hear
it? You don't have it.
Yeah,
that would be tough. So they worked an interesting match. It was heavy on selling, primarily from Christian, and Kazarian, kind of his growing frustration. He was wearing down Cage, using this cravat, and again, it's just heavy selling from Cage. And then they're slowly escalating things. Kazarian is focused on this chicken wing that he's been utilizing of late, while Cage is trying to work for the kill switch, and Kazarian is cutting him off. Throughout the show, we also got Wipeout promos, so you could technically say that John Cena made multiple appearances on Dynamite on Wednesday.
I think he was there in previous weeks, too. So, yeah, he's all over the show.
Kazarian hit a springboard leg drop off the middle rope for a 2 count, and then hit the flux capacitor for another near fall. Then there's a kill switch that gets blocked. He misses his follow-up springboard leg drop, and Christian Cage hits a top rope splash for his near fall. So essentially with the flux capacitor and the splash, we built up to each having a big near fall. The kill switch and chicken wing get blocked, and then Kazarian's shoulder is run into the post, allowing Christian to hit the kill switch and pin Kazarian in 16 minutes and 33 seconds. An extremely long match by AEW standards. It was not a very flashy match, and I think this is probably going to be a polarizing one to some. I liked the match. I got into it, but this was not your match that you would be comparing to, say, the Trios match that we'll get to later.
No, and I think if you're expecting that level of match from Christian, like you probably have never seen a Christian match. I actually thought this was a really good way of reintroducing Christian because, it wasn't a pay-per-view match. It wasn't even the main event. So people, I think, are coming in with relatively low expectations and with low stakes attached to it. I didn't really hear a great deal of buzz for a match like this. And I think a great deal of that is because Christian is a very kind of like subtle type of wrestler. I think it takes a great deal of appreciation for, things like selling and pacing to really enjoy Christian's style. But I thought this was a match that exactly displayed those strengths of his. This was 20 minutes of solid storytelling where he really kind of like got to show his psychology, and he really again continues to show, maybe even now more so than before, like he's somebody who seems to understand how to take his time, how to keep a story going through your body language and your facial expressions without only relying on the moves. And that is something that is very different from your typical AEW star. And so I see a match like this, and I'm actually more excited to see Christian's integration into the roster, because I think he brings something very different. You only have like a real handful of guys on that roster with fundamentals like his, who may be able to provide that younger roster with that level of experience. So I think he'll be of tremendous benefit to those younger talents, and it actually makes me very curious to see how he'll gel with somebody who is of a totally different, more physical style, like a Phoenix or a Kenny.
Yeah, I thought he had a great opponent for this type of match. I thought that it was like a slow building match, and by the time they got to, like, they didn't overdo it with any, going for constant big moves or stuff. It was like, we're going to build to Kazarian's flux capacitor and the splash. The Christian missed one, and then he hit it on the second one. Like, those were your high spots of the match. And then the end, where it was just Kazarian making a mistake, he gets posted, and then boom, finally Christian hits the kill switch that he had been working on. So kind of explaining like a backstory that Kazarian had this guy scouted as well, while you're also trying to convey that this is Christian's first match in 7 years. Like, Kazarian should be the one that is more seasoned, that is more prepared.
Yeah, totally. I thought Kaz was tremendous in this match. He really lit the activity here, and I thought he was awesome, allowing Christian to tell that underdog story. He's somebody who is so incredibly underrated, but I'm really excited to see more of Christian. It would be a big mistake if he came on here trying to wrestle like Kenny or the Bucks. That's just not to me why I would watch a match of his. It's not why he was probably hired. He was hired to do what other people can, and I thought he showed that here.
We also went, this match airing commercial free. AEW didn't go to a commercial till 22 minutes into the show. I think that's sometimes. Like, it happens a lot. AEW never breaks in their first match. And I think like that is something that if you're sitting down and say you're sitting down and starting NXT, and even if they're going to picture in picture, but they're taking that break 8-9 minutes in and you're flipping over, this is like, by this point, if you're just sticking around and suddenly you're 22 minutes in, I'm not flipping back and forth. I'm already deep into this show. I'm just sticking with this.
Totally. I mean, we do call the last match the main event, but most weeks it's that first match that is the most important, attracting eyeballs, So I think it was a big role for Christian, and I thought he did really well. Definitely interesting to see going forward without competition on the other channel, how the formats of these shows change. Will right. AEW be more willing to air things like video packages without having the worry of somebody flipping over to the next channel? How is that going to affect both shows format wise?
Yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how both shows change.
Is picture in picture even necessary anymore?
Yeah, I think it's established now into both presentations that they're not going to drop something that might be viewed as an asset to the viewer, but it'll be interesting. We also did not mention in the news that next Wednesday's first night of TakeOver, they are going to simulcast it on Peacock. So next week's show, it's clear like this is not a TakeOver that is just about doing a television number. Like, this is as much about getting people familiar with Peacock, pushing Peacock. I don't know how the commercial situation will work out on Peacock. Like, will it just replicate the ads that are on USA? Will it have limited commercial breaks, and that will push people to Peacock? But regardless, like, that is going to hurt the television number next week when people have the Peacock option, which might have less commercial interruption on it.
Very interesting. Well, it helps that they're all the same company. And even in Canada, I wonder if Rogers will go along with it, with it being on a Rogers service.
Then we had the video of Darby Allin with Sting, and this was just another Darby Allin style of video stating that Matt Hardy's body is breaking down and that Big Money Matt just hides his insecurities. You used to earn people's respect, now you try to buy it. And he's got the cutout of Matt Hardy over the face, and they're tossing money off of a bridge as Darby says, "Your money doesn't mean shit to me."
So he's still feuding with Matt Hardy? This thing is still going on?
That was the setup last week.
Yeah, I guess so. I just oh sorry, I'm thinking of Sammy Guevara and Matt Hardy.
That ship has sailed, yes.
You're right, absolutely. Yeah. So he's got done with Cage, he's moving on to Matt. Now, I guess I thought Matt was still going up against the Dark Order, but I guess he's got several feuds going on with different people.
Matt's got a lot of money programs on the horizon. It's a big day for him in 59 minutes. It's Q2.
That's right. Yes, gets to keep 100% of his earnings again.
Yeah, big quarter coming up. So right after this video, we come back from break, and it's a Jade Cargill video. She looks and sounds like money, and when I was booked by TK, I made that money. And she's cutting this promo on Red Velvet to keep talking that shit. I am that woman. I am that bitch. So AEW is going one step further. They've got like the go-to word in wrestling, of course, is bitch. That means your program is a heated one, but back-to-back videos where we got to drop a shit in there as well.
Well, if you're on cable and if you allow it, then I guess why not, eh? I definitely like understand, relying on a crutch like the word bitch for a newer star. And I think we see it with Bad Bunny. We see it with Jade Cargill. I kind of like it a bit better with Jade Cargill.
Jade Cargill is a very good promo already, I think. Cody Rhodes and QT Marshall. This was the unsanctioned exhibition match with Arn Anderson. Didn't realize this was unsanctioned until Justin Roberts announced it.
Yeah, why did it really need to be? Just so I guess Arn could be the ref, because otherwise, I guess he's not a real official.
Yeah, I guess rogue ref here. And then we have the Nightmare family members surrounding the ring. And I like this at the beginning where Cody comes out and QT's already in the ring and Jim Ross points out that QT doesn't get an entrance.
I love this. I thought it was
great point that Jim Ross just that set the whole scene for the match.
Well, I mean, I for sure it was intentional. Here you have Cody getting this big grand entrance with pyro and just everything. And then there's QT Marshall already in the ring. So I thought it was great scene setting and told you a lot of story even before they locked up.
Cody's got his shoulder taped up. They explain the partially torn labrum he's working with, and they shake hands. And the story of this is Cody out wrestling this guy at every turn. And then when he gets the advantage, like he has an opportunity to stomp QT, he doesn't take it. And then it's QT who gets upset, shoving Cody, and then attacks the shoulder. This was like a really well-structured match for what they were trying to do. Like, here's QT. Cody's trying to be the gentleman, but QT's going to go after his shoulder. And Cody comes back after the break, and he sets up for the figure four, but doesn't follow through. Does the same with the crossroads. And JR just says, QT cannot out-wrestle Cody Rhodes. A chant of Cody's friend starts. And then as QT gets back into the ring with Cody opening up the ropes, QT walks over and decks Arn Anderson with a shot. Everyone is stunned. QT goes to the stage, and suddenly once it sinks in what he's done, he's got this look of regret on his face. So the Nightmare family members get into the ring, and all of a sudden, it is a civil war. Anthony Ogogo, Aaron Solo, and Nick Comoroto attack Cody, Dustin, Billy Gunn, and even Lee Johnson. Johnson gets powerbombed onto the stage by Comoroto, who just was the monster here in this segment. QT steps on the man's face, on Lee Johnson's face, then snaps Arn's arm onto the guardrail. Comoroto then lifts the steps onto the stage. Dustin turned back the clock to double or nothing with Cody. He just was bleeding a gusher here. Two big segments involving blood on this show. QT wipes the blood onto Solo's shirt before delivering a pile driver to Dustin on the steps before they change focus to Cody, where Anthony Ogogo drills him with a left hand to the body. They put Cody's head onto the steps. Cody is then, as he's laying there, QT hoists up a chair for like a concerto onto the steps, but Red Velvet runs out to stop and save Cody, and the, I guess, heel unit of the Nightmare Family leave with what looks to be yet another faction in AEW that is very faction heavy. But a big angle. How did you think it came across and was executed?
Well, first, I really enjoyed the match. I thought the storytelling was really strong here. And in fact, like when QT had the heat, you know, I know like they have to take commercials, and typically they like to do it when, you know, the heel has the advantage. But man, I almost wish like they showed us a bit more of QT working over Cody's shoulder here, because I thought it was a very significant part of the story. I thought they did the match really well. And, you know, I think they're really trying hard to make you understand QT's motivation, because Cody is definitely a dick in this story, right? Like, you know, like showing mercy when really like he didn't really need to. You almost have sympathy for QT, but the one thing they did to make you definitely boo QT is to have QT inexplicably attack Arn Anderson, one of the most beloved people in pro wrestling. You know, and when you attack Arn, there's no way to cheer for somebody like that. So I thought by the end here, they kind of made the distinction really strong between heel and babyface, but you do understand why QT turned. I thought the angle was great. I think we all expected QT to cement the turn here, but I didn't expect him to bring 3 others along for the ride, and I didn't expect there to be so much blood in this angle. I really like the choice of guys in the stable. Everybody feels like they're bringing something different. Komoroto, in particular, is the obvious standout, but Solo is a veteran that, I mean, I think is more than ready to have a spot like this. Agogo is relatively new, but I think he brings some real-life credibility. So immediately, the fact that I can name every single one of these people tells you that it's probably going to be very strong for the 3 of them. It, to me, felt a little like the Nexus attack, except, you know, kind of with fewer nameless bodies, maybe a better story, and some actual veteran leadership in QT. So it not only elevates him, it also elevates the members of the Nightmare Family that are on the babyface side. People like Red Velvet and Lee Marshall, who now have rivals we all want to see them get revenge on. So they, I think, in one swoop, managed to elevate a ton of people in this.
I liked it for that part. I mean, this really put a focus on these, you know, Agogo, Solo, and Komoroto. I actually could have gone without the blood. I didn't think it was necessary. I think the angle was heavy enough just with the attack and the pile driver on the steps, that to me, especially when you were doing the Dax Harwood thing later on, that I just thought, save that for something like you've already got the shock of the attack.
Do you think the Harwood was Hardway though? Like it looked like it was in the back of the head that he got like busted open.
Well, the thing was like we didn't see it on screen. We just like pan over and Harwood's all bloody. So it's kind of like we didn't even see what exactly happened that led to it.
So it makes me wonder if it was planned or if it just happened. I mean, that
said, even without the Dax Harwood thing, like I didn't think like Dustin doing a big blade job. Like to me, that was an afterthought in this angle. It was a small thing. I don't think that was completely necessary either. So anyway, it was a big segment. Quicker than I thought they were going to do this. I thought you were going to kind of tease this QT Cody rivalry and then have the explosion at a later date. But I will say there is no more annoying heel tactic than a guy that's going for his submission on you and he just gives up on it, saying, I'll spare you. Like, dude, if you and I were rolling and you just suddenly transitioned and had my arm, but you didn't even like lean back, you just gave up on it and like patted me on the head, like would have got you. Would have been like, fuck you. You don't have no respect for my defensive abilities either. I'd be furious at that. Oh,
absolutely. I think you'll find a lot of QT sympathizers here. You know, maybe that's why he already had 3 people following him. So, you know, it's to me like sometimes, the ability to see the villain side of things that makes for a compelling feud.
Those are the best stories where you can understand where the villain is coming from, but you despise that person. It's like, I don't care that he can justify it. That's an awful person. I think those make for strong characters.
And he's going to have to explain why he attacked Arn to come up with some sort of justification. It's a big
and Dustin. It's like, dude, those two are probably the best trainers going right now in the country. Why would you attack Dustin? Yeah. So anyway, this will probably be, what Cody's big angle is attached to this. And you can get a lot of matches out of this too. Like, I'm sure Cody wants to work with all these guys that are now aligned with QT and do singles matches with, Anthony Ogogo has been a long-term project for them. And, Nick Comoroto, I thought he came across great as the big monster. It's almost like that is now the template for every faction that they have in AEW. But Comoroto has a great look to him, and he was put in a great spotlight here as the muscle of the unit.
I think it's a great way to populate Dark
then we had
and Elevation with matches that could have some sort of bigger relevance to an overall story. And I really don't mind the stable wars here in AEW. I mean, it's a template that works for New Japan, and it kind of just provides a bit of sense and order to everything in the company.
Then we had this unique vignette where it was Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky going back and forth talking about AEW hasn't lived up to their end of the deal. Sky saying he's overlooked, and then the lights come on and they're sitting together. And this sets up the two of them teaming on Elevation Monday against Matt and Mike Sydal.
Yeah, it was like a joint promo here, and it got a bit maybe too cute for to feel really realistic and believable. But I do like the two of them being paired together. They're both kind of you almost get the sense that they're both just two guys that AEW has no other plans for, so let's just put them together. And I do have to say, for Sky, I do feel like this turn has been pretty poorly thought out. He left. We don't even know if he's left SCU. Did we see that scene yet? So anyway, he goes solo only to win that brass ring match where he beat Ethan Page, and now he's forming a new team with him. So I don't know. I think we need a bit of explanation, but I look forward to seeing Page and Sky together to see what they could do creatively.
North and South.
North and South, okay. Yeah.
Dasha interviewed Red Velvet, who she said she's always got Cody's back, but then she gets jumped by Jade Cargill, who tosses her into the production equipment. So we are continuing there. I actually thought that Jade was going to come out earlier and attack Red Velvet, and Jade would be aligned with this other group as well. But we don't quite have that. Jon Moxley, this promo was great. So he's just pacing back and forth. He can't get the sound of Eddie Kingston's ankle snapping out of his mind. He asks which side the Young Bucks are on. I'm really pissed off. I've got burns on my skin, barbed wire scars, and a headache. That really pisses me off. And headaches piss me off too. He says that Cesar Bononi, he looks great. He looks like a Baywatch bodyguard. You can make a lot of money with him, but not if I kill him tonight. I love this promo. You can make a lot of money on him, but not if I murder the man.
Interesting way to build up to a squash match. I mean,
this is it. Yeah. Till death do they part. So Jon Moxley took on Cesar Bononi with Ryan Nemeth and JD Drake in his corner. Nemeth grabbed Moxley's leg, and this allowed Bononi to get the heat as they went through the break. Moxley came back with forearm strikes and a German superplex into an armbar, but then JD Drake distracts the referee. Nemeth comes in and gets hit with the paradigm shift, and as Cesar attacks from behind, the pump handle gets countered into the rear naked choke, and Cesar Bononi just collapses to the mat, and he goes out. Moxley then kisses him on the back, and Cesar is asleep. They do this close-up of him. This man knew how to sell a rear naked choke. I will say that.
It's a pretty big way to lose if you're a giant here like Cesar Bononi, but I think for how maybe low he is on the roster, by the time he eventually makes it to sort of a main event level where a loss like this would actually matter, I don't think he'll really remember something like this. And this happens to like young lions all the time. They lose in embarrassing fashion, and then like they'll come back when they're a main eventer to seek revenge, and they'll beat the other person. So I thought it was like an impressive win for Jon Moxley, beating a larger man. The match was really just kind of, to me, like an above average WWE match, but I thought a really cool finish with that pump handle into the rear naked choke.
I like the ending sequence with the submission. I thought, Benoni sold it like really well. It was, it's a nice finish. Team Taz, everything's fine. Starks and Cage then argued, so they're not fine. But Taz insists no one can stop the path of rage. And I guess we're waiting for, the shooter drop in this angle, because they sort of just feel like they're in a holding pattern now until they're ready to execute the next stage of this group.
Yeah, I guess so.
MJF is with the Pinnacle. He's hired a stylist and an interior decorator to fix this dump. And with that, MJF in the room opens up the bathroom door, and there is the inner circle. I had a lot of questions.
Like, how long were they waiting in this supposedly terrible smelling bathroom?
How did they get in there? Have they been in there all night? When did the Pinnacle arrive? Did they not see any shadows through the door? Did they all stand that long just staring a hole through that door until it opened?
And what if MJF never opened the bathroom?
Yeah, what if they didn't have to go for a long time? Anyway,
this would have not worked.
My immediate reaction was, this is a very bizarre way for the inner circle to come back. But then we got this unbelievable brawl. MJF just immediately shuts the bathroom door and goes to leave the room from the other door, but there is Jake Hager, and everyone pairs off. This included Sammy Guevara hitting his burning GTS to Spears in the hallway and then slamming the door on Spears' head. Hager and Wardlow fought, with Hager putting Wardlow through the massage table. Then Santana and Ortiz fought with FTR, where Cash Wheeler was knocked into an ice bath. And then we pan over, and after this weapon had been broken, we see Dax Harwood, and he is just bleeding an insane amount. And the blood is all over Santana's shirt. And then we cut to Jericho and MJF in the bathroom, which culminates with MJF's face being forced into the toilet, and then rams him into the fridge and pours the bubbly over him. And to really cement this blood feud, Jericho said, "This is our dressing room, bitch."
I agree that maybe the way that the inner circle initially arrived felt a little bit comical, and I was feeling a little bit uneasy because I was thinking, man, like, wouldn't it have been great if they like came back in a bit more dramatic fashion in front of a crowd or something? But they more than made up for that with this very intense beatdown, and I loved how the creativity that was put into every single spot here. I loved how each member of the team has their own counterpart on the other side. This already feels like a very hot feud.
And Tully just got the hell out of there.
He did. He was kind of beaten up, or threatened at least by Santana and Ortiz for a bit.
Well, yes, this was a hell of a brawl that they had, a very violent one. And from there we go to the segment with Alex Marvez and the Young Bucks, who don't want to air any more dirty laundry about Kenny Omega. So Don Callis walks in and pretty much just tells Nick to F off because he's going to talk to Matt. And Callis says he loves Omega, and he tells Matt that what you did last week, you broke his heart. He chose this place, not AEW. He chose you and Nick. And you chose to leave Kenny bleeding in the ring last week. And he asks Matt, "Are you dead inside? What's wrong with you?" And then he slaps the shit out of Matt Jackson. And Matt grabs Callis, but he calms down and lets him go. And Callis asks, "Is there anything in you at all?" and calls Matt pathetic. So we are not that far removed from these guys super kicking Don Callis. Do we not remember that?
A lot happened in these few months with these several people. Did they super kick him? And then he pretended. Then he was pretending that he got more hurt than he did.
He showed up with like the makeup. I could be misremembering this.
Yeah, so
nonetheless,
he pretended to be kicked.
They're definitely building up to Matt eventually just beating the hell out of Don Callis at some point, but I guess making us building it up for that moment.
Yeah.
Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers took on the Lucha Brothers and Laredo Kid. This was incredible. We had Laredo Kid, who was, again, featured very prominently throughout this match. Early on, it was Penta, Phoenix, and Laredo Kid just doing like triple team spots. This included Laredo Kid leaping onto all three opponents on the stage, and then Phoenix did a tightrope to a moonsault, and then they triple super kicked Kenny Omega while they were in the ring. We saw a pair of double tope suicidas with an acai moonsault to the floor, and then Laredo Kid gets hit by Anderson, followed by a gallows head kick, and they got the heat on Laredo Kid for a extended period of time. Eventually, Penta gets the tag, hitting sling blades, which allows Excalibur to note the flashbacks that the Good Brothers and Kenny Omega are probably having to Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Yeah. A way to throw in a bit of that reference. Yeah.
They attack Phoenix in the corner. They hit a triple team neck breaker, and then everyone gangs up on Carl Anderson, and they turn it. They attack Phoenix in the corner, and from there, Magic Killer gets stopped. There's a spinning roundhouse kick by Phoenix to Omega that sends Omega into a Canadian Destroyer by Pentagon. Just everyone is all over the place here. It's pretty spectacular stuff. Laredo Kid does a springboard, but is caught with a powerbomb by Omega in midair, who hits a V-trigger, sets up for the One-Winged Angel, and that's countered with a Rana and this insane tope suicida where Laredo Kid, like, rotated himself, so he, like, almost like powerbombed himself in midair coming down from this tope suicida to the floor. It was nuts.
He was insane. Yeah, he went full speed ahead with everything.
It didn't stop there. Then in this incredible sequence, Omega is staggering towards the ropes when all of a sudden, off screen, Phoenix like sprints across the top rope with a PK. God knows what he ran into off the camera. He just kept running on this top rope into oblivion. And that sent Kenny into a Michinoku driver by Laredo Kid for a near fall that I totally thought Omega was eating a fall here. Laredo Kid misses a Phoenix splash, takes the V-trigger and the One-Winged Angel, and Kenny Omega pins Laredo Kid. This was amazing.
An absolutely magnificent match. Very, slower action to start, but I mean, intentionally done because the rest of this was such a video game like incredible sprint, and it was just so awesome. It was a match where I don't envy you, John, for having to take play-by-play notes for, because even at half speed, I don't know if I would have been able to do it. I just sat back and enjoyed it.
It was a fantastic match. Don Callis even got in a reference to Simcoe afterwards. So Jon Moxley then walks out with the Young Bucks, and I love this. Matt was still selling the effects of this dreaded slap that Don Callis delivered to him. And then Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers bailed, and this is going to set up a 6-man for next week, which is a pretty big match with Moxley and the Bucks against Kenny and the Good Brothers.
Seems like it's almost a bit fast to be going to this right away, but, in one swoop, they managed to set up both of these 6-man tags, and I'm going to be looking forward to next week, maybe even more than this week.
Yeah, that should be a tremendous match next week. Britt Baker and Rebel did a promo for Elevation, with Baker stating that's where Thunder Rosa can get her wins up because the biggest win of her career, the Lights Out unsanctioned match, did not count. And Baker will continue to put AEW on the map.
Yeah. Decent promo here. Really just to kind of keep the momentum going from that great match 2 weeks ago.
Very hard to follow up on that Lights Out match by what it appears to be building up to a match that will count.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how you top that unsanctioned match. Like, that to me was like, that was the peak. I don't know how you follow that. You could have the greatest match, possible. And I think it's like you're going to be in the shadow of that lights out match.
I have no idea. We'll see.
Hikaru Shida and Ty Conti versus Nyla Rose and the Bunny. Matt Hardy did a promo before stating that the Bunny will no longer be excluded and is holding the Dark Order responsible for the financial hell he has suffered this quarter. And starting tomorrow, April 1st, he begins making 100% of his earnings and says Ty Conti will pay for the Dark Order's sins. So Dark Order is out, as is Matt Hardy and company. They note that Ty Conti is teaming with Shida, but Conti is the top contender. She has won 8 of her last 9 matches. And Shida is warning Matt Hardy to stay away as she gets jumped by Nyla Rose on the floor. Shida would fight out of the heel corner and then deliver the snap suplex to the Bunny into Nyla Rose in the corner. And it looked like the Bunny's boot caught Rose right in the head. It didn't look fun. Conti comes in with judo throws, bicycle knee to the face, and then the Dark Order, Matt Hardy, Private Party, everybody is fighting on the floor. And then we get the Ty KO onto Bunny. Nyla makes the save. Shida then takes out Rose with a high cross, but they all catch her on the floor. So Conti does her own. Everyone goes down. And then the Bunny has a kendo stick. Aubrey Edwards has to walk over to Vicky, and then the Bunny hits Ty Conti with the loudest kendo shot imaginable. Aubrey Edwards has to no-sell this gunshot that's just gone off next to her, and the Bunny hits down the rabbit hole, pinning Ty Conti.
I actually thought Conti continued to stood out here. Like, I loved her hot tag. I loved the way she sold this loss as well, with just that look of frustration on her face, because, you know, she hasn't lost so much lately. So this one meant a big deal to her en route to that, championship match against Shida. So I think she continues to be gaining like a good deal of momentum, and she's doing the most she can be with the spotlight that she's being given right now before that title challenge.
She was, to me, the standout of the whole match. Yeah, I didn't like the finish so much. I just thought it was not that creative. But it does set up a singles match for next week with Ty Conti and the Bunny, which joins the 6-man we just mentioned. Darby Allin against J.D. Drake for the TNT Championship. The Inner Circle are going to speak. And Godzilla vs. King Kong is sponsoring a match between Jurassic Express and Bear Country, where we had a promo from Jurassic Express where Marco Stunt revealed a Kong tattoo he has on his forearm. Of King Kong, not Awesome Kong.
Yes. They really found a perfect pair of teams to represent each monster for this sponsorship deal, so good for them.
And then the main event, Arcade Anarchy, with Miro and Kip Sabian, along with Penelope Ford, versus Chuck Taylor and Orange Cassidy. How great is the Best Friends entrance with the Pixies?
It is fantastic.
I love it.
I can't wait to see it with the full crowd.
Yeah, I think this entrance is so great. I've always loved this song, and I think it works so well with Orange Cassidy. I think that was such a tremendous idea. However, Tony Khan came up with that pairing.
Well, I'd love to know how much it costs.
Well, not our problem. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's. It said that they will have it in perpetuity for all future, wherever, if they get a streaming deal, it sounds like they will have this song preserved.
Awesome.
So good for them.
Will it get flagged on YouTube? I'm assuming not.
You would think no. Yeah. I think they'd be safe.
It was on Dark. So
yeah. They got the rights to it. So this was pretty much designed this was we were at a carnival. We had arcades surrounding the ring, and then one gimmicked arcade that they were going to use later, the Mortal Kombat 2 one, because God knows they were not going to destroy an actual arcade. And then we had a whack-a-mole setup. We had a prize rack. What did you think of the aesthetics to accompany Arcade Anarchy?
I thought it was pretty well done. For short of, I guess, actually having a match at an arcade or a Chuck E. Cheese, I thought they really had plenty of different elements that you would find there. They definitely kind of dressed the set with the big systems, but they weren't going to destroy any of them. Number one, because I guess they're expensive. Number two, because they would really hurt. But I thought, like, having the wall of prizes with weapons put over top of it was pretty cool. Having the UFO claw deal, I thought was a great way to set up the return that we were going to see.
That was pretty funny. We'll get to that.
Very clever
return. So anyway, they're fighting with all of the weapons. At one point, Chuck Taylor gets this teddy bear and empties it. It's full of Lego. These four were clearly out to change your opinion of this feud.
Oh yes, and you know what? It worked. I think I saw some Duplo in there. So yeah. Well done, Lego spot. The first
they were allowed to call it Lego as well.
Yeah, I guess we don't know if it was Mega Bloks or Lego, but I mean Lego is sort of the thing that we all know. Well, oh, you're right, because that you're referencing the WrestleMania match, weekend match, where they couldn't call it that. Yeah.
Kip delivered a sit-out powerbomb to Taylor on the Lego. Orange Cassidy made the save. He fired up with this great-looking swinging DDT and beach break combo, but Kip kicked out, hit the orange punch. Then Ford pulls Aubrey Edwards out to avoid the cover. And then Orange Cassidy comes down and Penelope kicks him low, takes off her belt. And then as she walks towards the UFO catcher, Chris Statlander is inside of the UFO catcher, making her return after 9 months away. And it was the tag match. It was Penelope and Chris Statlander that were on opposite sides in the match that Statlander got injured. And
she also has a connection to Orange Cassidy on BTE.
Yeah, you have that as well. And then she hit this big, like, fisherman buster off the apron through the air hockey table to Penelope Ford, which was, my God, if I was coming back from 9 months of injury, I don't know if I'd want to do this on night one, but more power to her.
I mean, she wasn't the one taking the move. She was delivering the move. So
still going through all that. It's like, God knows what this thing was made of, but hey, it seemed like it went well.
I think if you're Chris Statlander, you really couldn't have asked for a better way to return. I thought it was so clever putting her in the UFO capture, and then that incredible spot coming off of the apron through an air hockey table, and then really ending it with her being paired with the best friends. I thought it was such a great way to, have her come back with so much impact and really making her relevant in the midst of, I think, a storyline that she would really not just benefit from, but the team, I think, needs somebody like her. So I really like this return.
I wish it was kind of like where she emerges. I wish they had like built it up a little where it's like Penelope Ford is like backing away from Orange Cassidy and backs up into the UFO catcher, and then you see Chris Statlander just appear from behind. I think they could have done like a dramatic reveal. I'm thinking like, whoever blocked like Vince McMahon at WrestleMania 19, I think you could have gotten like a pretty cool reveal out of this.
I thought it was pretty dramatic, but yeah, maybe sure. Maybe they could.
Well, it was only the second best return here, because then later in the match, Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor are crawling up the ramp, and a minivan approaches, being driven by Sue to drop off the returning Trent. And they all attack Miro. This was great. Miro then fights them off, is delivering head kicks, and then waves to Sue, and he goes to climb onto the car, so Trent attacks Miro. And this is where Miro comes back and grabs the fake Mortal Kombat 2 arcade and misses Trent and destroys.
I don't know
this.
if it might have been one of those like kind of remake machines, like the 1-Up remake machine.
It looked like a box with like the artwork. They just like wrapped it with it.
Yeah,
I didn't think they were gonna destroy an actual arcade here. Nor do I think he could have. Yeah, this thing he just hoisted this thing up like nothing. Anyway, after that, he misses Trent. Trent spears Miro through a table, and then the big final spot is Taylor with a running power slam to Kip off the stage through more tables and pins him in 14:28. And we've got the Pixies playing. All three hug. We get the zoom out, Excalibur giving his call, and then Statlander enters the ring and joins the group hug while Sue is cheering from her minivan. This was great. It was a really great The match was fine, but to me, it was all the little like Easter eggs, the returns, and this ending that really were the strength of it for me.
I hated this feud, but I loved this match. Man, like the best friends to me are like, God, like I feel like they're making a name for themselves for having like pretty bad stories, but great street fights. Great, like just fantastic here, and fantastic, of course, with what they did with Proud and Powerful last time. This was just so much fun. You know, I think there's often bad plunder in wrestling, but there's good, creative, fun plunder, and this was certainly the latter. There's so many fun, creative spots, and to me, the great surprise returns of Statlander, Trent, and his mom were all just like very well planned, very well done. Maybe most impressive of all, I thought Miro finally looked like the unbeatable monster that we wanted this entire time. It took 3 guys to beat him down. The man near like threatened Trent's mom like a horror movie monster. He looked incredible, and he didn't take the pin. So I think he comes out of this match, like improved. And then just the closing scene with the Pixies playing behind it. I thought it was just tremendous TV.
It was like a genuinely happy moment to go off the air with, which is something that I think is greatly underserved in professional wrestling. It's fine to do your heat and your big angles and you're going off the air with like a controversy, but sometimes every now and then it's cool for a feud to end and you go off and it's not a cliffhanger. It's just like, it's a nice feel good moment. And I think that every now and then, I think all wrestling companies could borrow from that. Like other than Big E winning the Intercontinental title on that New Year's Day SmackDown, I cannot remember a WWE program that went off the air and you just had that like genuinely feel good moment.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't often go off the air with like something that wasn't like a main event for an upcoming pay-per-view. You know, like in AEW, I suppose, but they're willing to have like your undercard, mid-card feud be a main event, and often without pay-per-views, you're gonna have to end those programs on TV, and therefore you can, have some happy endings. But yeah, it certainly made for a very entertaining show.
So I think most people really enjoyed. I think Arcade Anarchy worked greatly. That trios match was unbelievably great. I really enjoyed Christian and Kazarian, and you got several big angles on this show, from the returns we mentioned, the Cody and QT angle, the return of the Inner Circle. Hell, I enjoyed like the Moxley promo as well. So I didn't have too many complaints on this show.
I really enjoyed the show. I thought, despite it being a taped show, the matches were very strong. The creativity was very strong. I thought, and then the angles all felt significant. So, man, like, I don't think the WWE has any excuse, for like having to do two shows in a row in a week on some shows. Like, that's no excuse for a lack of creativity, because like AEW does it every 2 weeks, and this is a very strong episode, I thought.
Very strong show, yes. Do you think it's kind of difficult now because it's like NXT is now like they're simulcasting it elsewhere? But do you see it being close next week for the final quote unquote head to head between
with
AEW
the Takeover
and
going
Takeover?
Up against?
Yeah.
Do I expect it being close? Yeah, I do. I think Takeover is still a big draw, big name. AEW I think is still strong, but to me, like, Takeover feels like a live event that most people will probably want to stick around and watch. And I think with some of the hysteria surrounding WrestleMania, that might play a bit of a factor into it as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if NXT, like we've seen for some of their big shows, like they have extremely limited commercial breaks. I imagine next week might be one of those where they very much clamp down on commercial time, but it's, yeah, it will be, certainly next week will be the final one, and we will see how close it is. But let's go to the forum and see what everyone had to say about tonight's show. It was a 7.95 out of 10 was the rating from the forum. So let's start things off with Johnny. The return of the Inner Circle was awesome, and I can't wait for the different matchups this feud provides. Christian seems to be a great addition for AEW because it adds some variance to the type of styles that AEW presents. Rey Fenix is still my wrestler of the year, and I'm glad Laredo Kid got 2 weeks of having the spotlight on him. While I didn't like the build to Best Friends versus Miro and Kip, it might be the nostalgia of seeing Mortal Kombat and Killer Instinct 2 cabinets. I really did enjoy the main event. The only negative I have is the QT segment. I'm fine with all these factions, but this new one feels like it's tied with the Hardy faction in terms of its level of being threatening. The heel turn of everyone else felt extremely rushed, as we never got to see them interact on Dynamite. We got the Pinnacle and Kenny's Bullet Club. It's hard to see what this new one will bring. Overall, an 8 out of 10.
I mean, I certainly don't see QT's crew, feuding with the Bullet Club or like, man, any other group anytime soon. But, I think they could be competitive against something like the Dark Order. It's not like the Dark Order or like World Beaters or anything. I really do see maybe, that whole feud taking place more on Elevation or Dark. And maybe, focusing on QT and maybe Nick Camarato matches occasionally on Dynamite. We got a Nick from Boston who says, this was a far more focused episode of Dynamite. While I thought last week meandered a bit, tonight flowed at an exceptional pace with an immense amount of strong, diverse action. The experience of Christian Cage is going to be invaluable to this roster, and he proved that even after 7 years away, he could still deliver an exceptional TV match. The return of the Inner Circle was a brutal spectacle, and I appreciated the cinematic quality of the beatdown. I'm less sold on the Nightmare Factory's betrayal. AEW will have to work hard to familiarize its TV audience with the likes of Solo and Agogo, who've appeared almost exclusively on their YouTube content, but the angle was still strong work. Although does it reflect poorly on Cody that everyone keeps betraying him? It'll be interesting to see how Dynamite balances having so many heel factions running rampant at the same time. The trios match was so much fun, and it's refreshing to see the Bucks put their foot down and align with Moxley, as they can occasionally feel caught in the middle of confusing drama. If you had to pick an 80s, 90s rock song for your entrance, what would it be? Do you have a choice?
No, I don't. Do you have one? What comes to mind?
Oh, dude, there's too much pressure. It's like asking what my favorite song is. So, no.
I'd insist I come out to Mr. Wazo. I'd skip a decade.
Yeah, that might be later.
Andrew from Cape Breton writes, I love Tony Schiavone's glee with everything that's happening. It felt like Jim Ross was going to bury the Lego and Schiavone put it over huge and was a real big positive to the match itself, which was another crazy plunder match featuring the Best Friends. Great show overall tonight, but one comment I want to make is on QT Marshall's new group. I love putting more guys on TV, and it's good to see some fresh faces in this group, but QT feels like such a poor choice to lead anything. I know looks aren't everything, but he doesn't look like a big-time star, and he also isn't this dynamic wrestler or promo. I think this spot would have been better for someone like Ethan Page or someone else who could be better in a leadership role, especially with all these guys being relative unknowns.
Well, I mean, the story wouldn't work if it was Ethan Page. I mean, it's because QT and Cody have that relationship, and because he has the real background of being the trainer at this thing that you could even do it. And I do feel like he has a lot more to show on TV, QT, in the promo department than what he has. And I mean, the look does not bother me at all. Like it's never really bothered me. Like, short of a guy being, I think, so small that you can't buy that he can. Like, we know the dude is a leader because he trains all these people. So to me, it's more than believable. But yeah, maybe that won't work for everybody. So maybe he does have some convincing to do.
And the group ultimately is going to be more about the other members, I think, than QT, ultimately. Like, this is kind of their introduction into, like, an actual story.
We got a Noah from Vaughn who says, I thought last week's show was one of AEW's best of the year, and somehow this topped it. Christian looked amazing in his return, and the Inner Circle return was one of my favorite segments they've ever done on Dynamite. The trios match was fantastic, and Ty Conti continues to be one of the most improved wrestlers I've seen in such a short amount of time. The QT Marshall and Nightmare Factory students turning on Cody's crew was done really well, but man, that main event was just fantastic, and now is the second time that the Best Friends have been put in a main event gimmick match and knocked it out of the park. Just a real feel-good ending to a fantastic show.
Kenny writes, how many heel stables is too many? I'd say when QT Marshall is leading his own group, that's too many. At least they didn't have the lights go out again so they could sneak up on Cody. Did anyone else hear Excalibur say that the ring steps weighed over 500 pounds? I really enjoyed the opener. It started slow, but they had me by the end, and the six-man. That Michinoku driver was as close to a Kota Ibushi tribute as I've ever seen on Dynamite.
I mean, they have heel stables, but they also have babyface stables coming up at the same time, and that's going to be with Cody's new faction, or at least, people in the Nightmare family, or whatever they call themselves, taking a bigger step up. And the Inner Circle are babyfaces now.
If you were to eliminate, a bunch of these factions, there would be no TV time for a lot of these people. You would have no stories going on for a Brian Cage. You'd probably, Ricky Starks would be, a lot of this roster is gigantic. So in some ways, the factions, it at least groups everyone. So at the base level, you have an identity for somebody because they're attached to this group. Are there a lot of them? Yes. But I don't know if the alternative of having just, say, two factions would be the best answer either for this roster with this limited amount of time, of television time.
Again, to me, it's a formula that I think works decently for New Japan Pro Wrestling. I mean, I do sometimes wish that there were even more factions in New Japan just because so many guys get lost in, for instance, the Bullet Club. But to me, AEW seems to have found a pretty good formula with 5-member factions or under 5. Allowing everybody to take a bit of identity. And, like we mentioned, especially the big men, being kind of hidden with some of the other guys, not having to do all the talking, not having to do all the high flying stuff, of course, they just look so much better when they're, being surrounded by smaller guys, just coming in there to do their power spots. So I think they've proven that they could treat this well. I think to me, the jury for me is still out on the Hardy family deal. But I'm optimistic about some of these other ones.
It also allows you to do those multi-person tags that keep singles matches fresh and that you're not that. That's another thing is that, it's not often that we when is the last singles match where people are oh, this again? They don't recycle matches too often in AEW. And when you have those groups, it can allow for you to space things out as well.
Mm-hmm. We go to Robbie from London, who says, I really enjoyed tonight's show. As a huge fan of his TNA run, it was great seeing Christian Cage return to the ring against Kaz. Some footage of their 2000 Impact match would have been an added bonus, but for his first match in 7 years, I thought it was great. Besides that, we had a great 6-man, a really fun main event, and a hell of a show all around.
Next one here, that main event was the funnest I can remember wrestling being, though the last time I said that, it was also about Dynamite. Keep wrestling fun, keep awesome characters like Orange Cassidy and Chris Statlander featured, and keep making wild brawls that make me forget that I already thought this was the best show of the year, with an amazing Inner Circle versus Pinnacle cinematic brawl, let alone that amazing main event. That was one sentence. 2 sentences. I could use less Bullet Club reunions if it means more Anderson and Gallows, and maybe get someone like Veda Scott to not only be some much needed representation in the booth, but to also fill the needed role of actually giving a shit about what's happening the whole time, unlike JR. But whatever JR lacks, Shivani seems to make up for with his enthusiasm for what wrestling has become. And if you haven't seen her indie run, Chris Statlander is about to be your favorite wrestler, because if you did see that run, she's already your favorite. Okay, this is going on very long. Okay. Lastly, it's clear why Tony Khan spent big for the Pixies. Doesn't that closing of the show with the goofy good guys and their moms celebrating work better with an actual song that can make you feel instead of the Best Friends theme? It's a great addition, the Pixies song. I definitely agree with that.
I agree too. JR's going to be in the booth. He is the most recognizable voice on that roster of commentators, and I think is worth his airtime for that reason. He like it or not, I think he brings a great deal of credibility to a casual fan who might be flipping through channels and recognizing his voice. But I totally agree that I think somebody like Veda Scott would be very welcome on another show. I think the times I've heard her, I thought she's done great. She's very familiar with all the people that are coming up from the indies. I think she would be a great addition to Elevation with Tony and Big Show. But they have a lot of commentators right now too.
Yeah, they do. So we'll see if they work her into, a role at some point, because I think she's very talented. All right, that's all the feedback we've got. So thank you, folks, for leaving your thoughts on Dynamite. We will also send you on over to Up Next, as Braden and Davey have a whole rundown of tonight's edition of the show, leading into TakeOver Stand and Deliver next week, as we will be a week from now in the midst of the WrestleMania week insanity.
Yeah, a lot of stuff we're preparing, and it all kicks off Saturday with post-podcast day.
That's right. One last push, everybody. Noon Eastern time. It'll be kicking off with Braden and Davey with the worst WrestleMania matches ever that they will be counting down and figuring out which was the worst of them all. So that will kick things off at noon, and the whole schedule is up at postwrestling.com/podcast day. Tomorrow, Thursday, is the first of the month, so it's the best time to sign up. You get access to all of our archives, every single Rewind Away, and all of our WrestleMania week coverage as well. We will have quite a lot up on the site, and we're here live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday nights after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, which will be the case this Friday at 10:15 Eastern for all patrons, as we will be opening up the phone lines.
Yeah, very exciting. And, if you're not a patron, there's still plenty of stuff on the free feed as well. Coming out this weekend, we have another edition of The Long and Winding World Road with W.H. Park. And, we hope you'll tune in for all that.
And when is MCU Later coming out this weekend? Is that Sunday?
That'll be coming out Saturday night, so it'll be a bit of a long day for me. But I'm looking forward to talking about this, because I'm not just joined by WH Park for this edition. I'll also be joined by Shane McDonough to help us maybe navigate some of the ongoing stories in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I'm looking forward to watching that and talking about it.
All right, keep your ears open for all of those shows. Postwrestling.com is your place to be. So go check out all of that, all of the latest news. And that's it for us. Thank you for listening to Rewind-A-Dynamite.